Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Tim at 10. Today is Thursday, September 9th, 2021, and today we are here to talk about care requirements for toddler caregivers. So toddlers, again, defined as 18 months through 3-year-olds. So any of y'all working in a toddler classroom or 2-year-old classroom, this webinar is for you. Or those of you that are administrators that are coaching and leading individuals in toddler or 2-year-old classrooms, this is for you to help lead and coach your people accordingly. Welcome. I see everyone is joining us. I'm so glad that you're all here this morning. I hope you all had a wonderful Labor Day weekend and enjoyed your 3 days to rest and relax and refresh. The bad part about having a 3-day weekend is it makes this 4-day work week the longest 4 days of the year. Always feels that way, huh? Hope that everyone is having a successful transition back to school. Many of you are already back in session. You've always been in session. Some of you are about to start your school year. Whatever your situation may be, I hope it's going well and it's being successful and healthy. If you have a copy of the Child Care Minimum Standards, that would be helpful for you to have a copy of that. If you don't have a copy of the Child Care Minimum Standards in front of you, that's okay. You can just follow along with the video and take notes accordingly. But I am going to reference the Child Care Minimum Standards throughout the video. Thank you, everybody who is wishing me a happy birthday week. I sure do appreciate that. Monday was my birthday, and so I love it. Every 7 years, this happens where my birthday falls on Labor Day, so you all get the day off on my birthday. We'll have that happen again in a few more years, 7 more years, I guess. But thank you for all of those birthday wishes. And hopefully you saw the link that I posted on Friday on our Facebook page about supporting the Life is Good Foundation, the Playmakers, where that is an organization that supports children with trauma that is due to poverty or tragedies or, different significant events. And so it's a wonderful organization. So what I've asked everybody in lieu of presents, make a donation to the Life is Good Foundation. That was my birthday wish. And so those of you that did that, I sure do appreciate it if that was possible for you and your family. And we got some birthdays coming up, it looks like. So happy early birthday to you, Letitia. Man, it was a busy time back in December, I guess. And so we got all these early September birthdays. Fantastic. All right, let's get to our topic at hand. And we're going to talk about the basic care requirements for toddlers. This is subchapter I as in igloo in the Child Care Minimum Standards. If you have the most current copy of the Child Care Minimum Standards, this is on page 140 that we're going to talk about. And then I'm also going to talk about discipline and guidance when it comes to working with toddlers and 2-year-olds. So as we continue to move through this series of basic care requirements, I want to include age-appropriate discipline and guidance for each of the age groups as well as we go through that. All right, so what are the basic care requirements for toddlers? And once again, these are going to be toddlers and 2-year-olds. So licensing does define a toddler 18 months through 36 months. So it would be toddlers and 2-year-olds is what we typically call them. We may call them a 2-year-old. Licensing calls them a toddler. All right. So the basic care for toddlers, there are 5 basic care requirements that are the main ingredients right here. Routines such as diapering, feeding, sleeping, indoor and outdoor activities are maintained as closely as possible. And that's an important one right there. And those of you that this might be your first time joining one of our Facebook Lives, there is going to be an opportunity for you to complete a worksheet at the end of today's webinar, and that's how you will get a certificate of completion if you need that. This is actually a worksheet question right here. So those of you that are taking notes, you might want to write this down. Routines such as diapering, feeding, sleeping, indoor and outdoor activities are maintained as closely as possible. We talk a lot in our trainings about predictability, and our brain is a pattern-seeking organ, and we crave patterns and sequences, especially when you've got a child that is in the toddler age, that they are transitioning from being an infant into being a child, all right? So, look at that right there. They're going from an infant to being a child, and those routines are no longer based on the individual child's needs, but the routines are now based on the group. All right. So that's a big transition if you really think about that right there. Going from that infant stage where it's all about that individual child to where now we're going into a group setting where everyone's kind of doing the same thing at the same time. All right. Such as diapers, feeding, sleeping, indoor and outdoor activities. So needs to be maintained as closely as possible. Routine and structure has to be established right here. So once again, we're going to talk about discipline and guidance towards the end of our hour. As much routine that we can establish, the better the predictability, and that's going to really help the child make this transition. Oh, Maria, thank you so much. Those of you that are home providers, your page number in the minimum standards is a little bit different. So she's telling me it's on page 137 for those of you in licensed or registered homes. I always focus on licensed centers because that's my specialty, but thank you for helping those out that are in the registered home and licensed home arena. All right. The second basic care for toddler age groups, just like the infants, care by the same caregiver on a regular basis. So once again, they are forming those social and emotional skills. The blueprint for social and emotional development is still being formed at this age group. So that's important to remember right there, is that that blueprint is still being created. They need consistency with their caregivers in order for them to build a healthy attachment system, all right? A healthy attachment system, they have to have consistent caregiving. So those of you that are administrators that are watching this, when you're doing your scheduling and you're making your assignments based on skills, abilities, and trainings, making sure that you have the same teacher in those toddler and 2-year-old classrooms on a consistent basis is so incredibly important for the children, all right? Because that's going to help them build that healthy attachment system that will stay with them for the rest of their life. Infants and toddlers that have inconsistent caregiving during these first few years of life struggle with social and emotional skills for the rest of their life, all right? So, once again, when you're hiring somebody to work in your toddler 2-year-old classroom, hey, I would love for you to work here in our school and be part of our school family, but if you're going to be assigned to a toddler 2-year-old classroom, you've got to give me a 1-year commitment, all right? Parents, when you're enrolling your child into our toddler or 2-year-old classroom, you need to give me a 1-year commitment. And this is not from a business standpoint, this is for the child, because the child needs that consistency, all right? Very important right there for them. Individual attention given to each toddler, including playing, talking, and cuddling, all right? So once again, keep in mind that this child is moving from that infant stage to that toddler stage where they're part of a group. So that insecurity is going to come in if they don't feel included. All right. And of course, we talk about this once again in so many of our trainings. 5 minutes of one-on-one time with each child each day reduces your power struggles by 50%. So really making sure that you're giving that individual attention to that toddler, individual play, all right, talking to them, asking open-ended questions. Remember, they're building their vocabulary. How are they going to build their vocabulary? They're going to build their vocabulary by modeling after you, all right? You're getting to program their inner speech. All right. And y'all have heard me talk about this so many times in so many webinars. But with children who have immature inner speech, meaning that voice that they have inside of their head, your outside voice becomes their inside voice. All right. Write that down. Your outside voice becomes their inside voice. All right. So playing and talking, modeling, all right, using those nurturing words, maintaining that composure and downloading that calm, you're programming that child. All right. So the individual attention and the way that you talk and you play and you nurture is so incredibly important for this age group. Now, I'm going to be the first person to admit, working with toddlers and 2-year-olds, that's a tough group, isn't it? All right. You've got to have a lot of skills with maintaining composure. You've got to have a lot of skills at downloading calm because you're working with children who don't have a lot of skills in their bag. All right. Because when the world is not going their way or when they get triggered, they can only use the skills, that they've got in their make-believe bag. All right. And they don't got a lot. Most of the skills that toddlers and 2-year-olds have are what we call primitive skills. All right. It's the skills that we have in common with other mammals. So your individual attention, playing with them, talking to them, cuddling them, being there for them, you're adding skills to their bag so that when the world doesn't go their way, they're going to be able to use the skills that you model. All right. So working in that toddler 2-year-old classroom, you've got to practice a lot of composure. All right. You've got to practice a lot of self-calming skills, and you download that to the child. These kids still need to be held and comforted whenever they are upset. So that is another one of the 5 basic care requirements for toddlers, holding and comforting them when they are upset. Again, they are just transitioning from that infant stage to the toddler stage where they're part of a group. That can be a scary transition for them. And we talked about this in the basic care requirements for infant caregivers. You're not always going to be able to assist that child at the moment that they have a need. But if it is a healthy attachment system, then the child is going to know that the teacher may not be able to get to me right now, but she or he will eventually get to me. And that's important for them to know that, all right? I have an unmet need and I'm upset, but it's okay because my teacher will eventually be there to comfort me whenever I'm upset. If it's an unhealthy attachment situation, then and there's not a lot of consistency, and you don't have the same caregiver on a regular basis, then they're not going to know that the teacher will eventually be there for me, and that could create trauma. All right. So, all of these kind of come together. They all come together. And then the 5th basic care requirement for the toddlers is to ensure that the environment is free of objects that may cause choking. So once again, Remember, a primitive skill that is very often seen in this age group is they put things in their mouth. All right. Children learn to explore by putting things in their mouth. When we talk about developing executive skills, all right, they learn to explore. They're curious about the world around them. All right. So it's very common for things to go into their mouth. You want to make sure that you don't have choking hazards. All right. So the toilet paper tube, making sure nothing in that toddler classroom can freely go through a toilet paper tube. That can help you avoid having choking hazards. Now, again, when we talk about developing executive functions and growing those cognitive skills, the first way children learn to explore is by putting things in their mouth. So if you're working with early toddlers, you see this quite often. All right. Let them explore, let them be curious as long as it's safe and healthy for them and the others around them. But you're going to have a disinfecting bucket in your classroom. So as soon as they're done, putting it in their mouth, then of course you'll put it in the disinfecting bucket. You'll sanitize it and disinfect before it goes back onto the shelf. Now, for the second way children learn to explore, and you're going to see this in this particular age group, is dump and fill. Dump and fill. And again, working in a toddler 2-year-old classroom, it feels like this is your entire day, right? You have a bucket full of toys and manipulatives, and that toddler is going to grab that bucket and dump it out, all right? Because they are curious and they want to explore, all right, what happens whenever I dump the bucket, okay? And then the second part of that is to fill. And again, patterns and sequences, using your vocabulary, you're picking up the red blocks and you're putting the red blocks in the bucket, just like this, Look, you emptied the bucket. Would you like to pick up the red blocks or the blue blocks first? What works best for you? And then we're going to fill the bucket, all right? And turn that into a learning activity. It's not just cleanup, all right? Filling that bucket is an actual learning opportunity that develops cognitive skills and helps build those executive functions. So the dumping and filling that happens so frequently in a toddler 2-year-old classroom is actually a good thing, y'all. All right. I know that it can be frustrating, especially if you're a teacher that's like OCD and you want your classroom clean and organized all the time. Yeah, it ain't happening in a 2-year-old classroom, toddler 2-year-old classroom. But what they're doing is they're creating opportunities for you to teach. All right. So that's the good thing right there. Let's just do a really quick review of the 5 basic care requirements for toddlers. Routines such as diapering, feeding, sleeping, indoor and outdoor activities maintained as closely as possible. So again, that predictability, the structure, and the routine. Care by the same caregiver on a regular basis. All right. We want to build that healthy attachment system. It's the blueprint for social and emotional development that's going to stay with them for the rest of their life. Individual attention given to each toddler, including playing, talking, and cuddling. Once again, knowing that the caregiver is going to be there for them. It's the connections and the relationships. You're building relationships with that individual attention. When people are in a relationship, they are more willing to meet expectations. All right. So forming that relationship in that toddler 2-year-old classroom is important. Holding and comforting that toddler whenever they're upset. They still need that in this particular age group. And then ensuring that the environment is free of objects that may cause choking hazards. All right, there you go. Let's talk about the arrangement of your toddler 2-year-old classroom. The toddler 2-year-old classroom, spaces in the room that allow both individual and group time. All right. So you need to have a large enough space that you can do small group activities. But a big characteristic of the toddler 2-year-old age group is that they are learning independence and they are learning to be able to play freely on their own. So you want to have a large enough space that they can have that individual space to play and explore, but then also you can bring them together as a group. All right. Now, when we start talking about activities for toddler 2-year-olds, yes, you could probably have a circle time with a toddler 2-year-old group. It's got to be very short. All right. Maybe 2 to 3 minutes is how long your circle time is going to last in a toddler 2-year-old group. If you can make it to 5 minutes, you're a rock star. All right. But there's going to be a lot of independent play or small group play in a toddler 2-year-old setting. All right. And of course, an environment that allows the caregiver to supervise all children at all times. So sight, sound, positioning, proximity, and awareness. I do this activity whenever I do supervision trainings where, we talk about sight, sound, awareness, positioning, and proximity. And depending on the age group you're working with, which of those 5 are the priority? Is it sight? Is it sound? Is it awareness? Is it your positioning? Is it your proximity? All right. And it's going to be different for each of the different age groups. All right. For a toddler 2-year-old classroom, there's kind of 2 of them that I think is so incredibly important right here. Proximity is one. All right. So your play environment is designed where the caregiver can be positioned in an area that you can easily get to the child, whenever they need guidance and coaching. So when you see conflict that is about to occur, you need to be close enough to be able to intervene and coach and guide. All right. And I think awareness is the other thing here when we talk about supervision. Being aware of each individual child's needs, all right? Being aware of their developmental levels. So where are they at on their developmental milestones and their developmental stages? And when we talk about toddlers and 2-year-olds, you've got a very wide range of developmental stages right here, all right? And so you could have a classroom with 7 or 8 toddlers, and all 7 or 8 of them could be in a different part of their development. So that awareness of what the child is capable of, what skills do they have, what skills are they practicing, all right, what skills don't they have is important whenever you're interacting and engaging with them, all right? When we talk about furnishing and equipment right there, of course, you need age-appropriate seating, tables, nap and rest equipment. So this is going to be your smaller pieces of equipment that the children can play and sit in a comfortable manner. All right. Now, again, this is a difficult one because they are in between that infant stage versus a preschool, pre-K stage. But, having that age-appropriate furniture that they can comfortably sit in is important. And remember, they're still learning balance and stability. So having chairs and equipment that, will help support their body so that they don't fall out of the chair. But if they do fall out of the chair, they're not going to fall a long ways and be injured right there. One of the most important things when we talk about furniture and equipment, and this is actually a question on your worksheet, is that there are enough popular items so that toddlers are not forced to compete with them. Now, cooperation and sharing is a skill that has to be taught and practiced. All right. So, teachers that are watching this right now, administrators that are coaching, teachers and caregivers, cooperation and sharing is a skill that has to be taught and practiced. It is not something that comes naturally. All right. And this is the age group where where they're starting to have to compete or share toys and equipment. All right. You're going to want to have enough of the popular items in the classroom that you can teach this skill. All right. And practice it. Practice it. Practice it. All right. We're going to share the baby doll just like this so that everyone can have a turn. All right. When you want to play with the baby doll, tap Cynthia on the shoulder just like this and say, "May I play with the baby doll?" All right. Practice with me now. All right. And these are some words that you can use to help teach these skills. All right. But if you don't have enough popular items for the toddlers and 2-year-olds, it will create conflict. All right. And that's when aggression is going to come into play, and manipulation is going to come into play, where they're going to use aggression to try to get what they want. All right. Because once again, that is a primitive skill that they're going to use aggression to get what they want. So we've got to teach the skill of cooperation and sharing. We've got to teach the skill of empathy. So that's that. Containers or low shelving that are accessible to toddlers so that toddlers can safely obtain the items without adult intervention. So the shelving that you have in your classroom needs to be low enough that the child can get the items off of the shelf. Sometimes when I go into toddler 2-year-old classrooms, I see all of the toys and equipment up on high shelves. And I'm like, hey, what's up? Why do you have all the toys and the equipment up here on a high shelf? And then the teacher is like, well, because the kids just keep getting into them, and then they leave them all over the classroom and they make a mess. So I put them up here so that the kids can't get to them. Well, the purpose behind having toys and equipment in the classroom is for the children to play with them, is for the children to learn and explore so that they can create that curiosity, so they can see how things work. All right. And you get to lend all of these skills to them that will help develop their cognitive skills and their executive functions. They can't do this when toys and equipment are up on a tall shelf. So they need to be easily accessible, all right, so that we can teach these skills. Bottles and training cups, if they are used in the classroom. And once again, this is a worksheet question. So those of you that are going to complete your worksheet at the end of the webinar, bottles and training cups, if they are used, must be labeled with the toddler's first name and the initial of their last name, all right? Or otherwise individually assigned to each toddler. So make sure that we're labeling these so that we don't have cross-contamination. They need to be cleaned and sanitized between each use, all right? And here's a big one. They are used for drinking and feeding, and never allow toddlers to sleep with or walk around with a bottle or training cup. Now, when I do my trainings on some of the most commonly cited minimum standards, this is a very commonly cited standard right here, is that programs are cited for toddlers walking around with a bottle or training cup, all right? And I see it all the time. And it's usually because when the parent drops them off, they drop them off with a training cup in their hand, and then the toddler's walking around the classroom with it. All right. Bottles and training cups are to be used for drinking and feeding. All right. But you can get a deficiency if they have the bottle or training cup when they're sleeping or walking around with it. All right. So, and again, this is that transition from when they're in the infant room, their needs are being met on an individual basis. Now that they've transitioned into the toddler 2-year-old group, you're doing things as a group activity and you're doing things in a schedule and routine. We're all eating at the same time. We're all sleeping at the same time. So once again, these are skills that we have to practice with the kids. All right. So that's important right there for you to remember. All right, let's talk about some activities that we can provide in the toddler classroom. We need to have daily activities that include the following: opportunities for outdoor play when weather permits. And if you are a full-time program, there needs to be an opportunity both morning and afternoon. And you need to have 60 minutes of outdoor play. So 1 hour of outdoor play, a combination of an hour of outdoor play if you're a full-time program. Now that can be 30 minutes in the morning, that can be 30 minutes in the afternoon when weather permits. Now, as of right now, September 9th, 2021, you get to define based on your programs, the way your program is designed, you get to decide what is the definition of weather permits. All right. What is the climate in your area? What temperatures are the children used to and can tolerate? Do you have shade on your playground? These are all things that you want to take into consideration when defining weather permits. All right. But a total of 60 minutes. Now, if you're a part-time program, so you're only open 5 or 6 hours a day, then you're going to check with your local licensing rep on how that 60 minutes is prorated. All right. And it's based on the number of hours the program operates, not the number of hours that the child is in care. All right. But as of right now, we're still referring people to your local licensing rep for their interpretation of how to do that formula if you're a part-time program. Now, if you're open 6:30 to 6:30, you're a full-time program, 60 minutes of outdoor play each day that weather permits. All right. Opportunities for thinking skills and sensory development. Some examples of age-appropriate equipment or activities include shape or item sorting toys. So we've already kind of talked about dump and fill. These would be sorting activities that you can do right here. Stacking or nesting toys. All right. So we're going to do some fine motor development, but they're going to have to think about how to stack those and get them to stack appropriately. Puzzles with at least 6 pieces. All right, so your toddler 2-year-old classroom, puzzles, 6 pieces is the ideal number right there. Washable board books, because again, they're going to put things in their mouth. So you need to be able to sanitize, any books that you have in your classroom. So whether they're laminated or they're hardback books, that you can safely sanitize them without ruining them. That's going to be important right here. Washable blocks, snapping and taking apart toys. These are all examples of thinking skills and sensory development. All right. Now, again, I've talked a lot in my previous trainings about children with sensory processing disorders. When you're in a 2-year-old classroom is when you might start to identify some sensory processing issues. All right. So if you have that child that is having a hard time with touching certain objects or certain smells or certain sounds, you might start documenting some of your observations. It could be that there is a sensory processing issue. All right. But this is when we start to notice some of these things right here. Opportunities for small muscle development. So some examples of small muscle development in a toddler 2-year-old classroom. Large size washable crayons or markers. I prefer crayons. A variety of paper and art material. A table or art easel. Large paintbrushes, non-toxic Play-Doh, large-sized washable toy transportation vehicles, toy animals, toy people. All right. So again, we're starting that small motor development, that small muscle development. So they're using their fingers, all right, to hold, to pick up, to pinch, their pincers. All right. And it's not just their fingers, but toes too. All right. And you can do some fun activities with their toes centered around all this. But how they hold the crayon, how they're picking up the paintbrush and using the paintbrush, they're picking up the toys. This is all really good for small muscle development. Then we move on to opportunities for large muscle development. Y'all need to pay very close attention to this one because the opportunity for large muscle development is critical in this particular stage of life, all right? So low climbing structures, small riding toys, toys for pushing, toys for pulling, a variety of lightweight balls that they can play with both indoors and outdoors, and then musical instruments, all right? So drumming is really good for patterns and sequences, all right? Drumming is very popular right now in a lot of age groups, but you're especially going to see this in the toddler classroom. Now, when I say this is an important one right here, because the opportunities for large muscle development, these are typically the behaviors that you get most frustrated with, all right? Stop climbing on the tables, stop climbing all over the chairs, get off that shelf, because they're going to climb. They're learning their independence. They're recognizing the fact that they have large muscles and that they can use large muscles in this age group. And so they're going to explore and they're going to climb. Your job is to give them the appropriate equipment for them to climb on. If you don't give them the appropriate equipment for them to climb on, then they will find something to climb on, all right? But it's going to happen either way, all right? So let's find the appropriate and safe equipment for them to climb, and then if they do tumble and fall, that they fall in a safe manner. Let's talk about opportunities for moderate to vigorous active play. And this is actually on your worksheet right here too. So moderate to vigorous active play, both indoors and outdoors. So once again, music, dancing, songs, simple games, dramatic and imaginary play, all right, that encourages movement. So once again, dancing, running, climbing, stretching, walking, marching, this is where when we talk about caregivers and teachers that are assigned to a toddler 2-year-old classroom, they've got to have the skills, the abilities, and the training to appropriately work with this age group. The individuals that are working in a toddler 2-year-old classroom, the adult needs to be a very active and mobile adult, all right? Because you need to be out there, being dramatic, being imaginary, all right? Creating imaginary scenarios for the children. And you, the adult working in a toddler 2-year-old classroom, you need to be dancing with the children. You need to be running with the children, climbing with the children, stretching, walking, marching with the children, because you're the role model and they're going to follow your lead. All right. And you are required, if you're a full-time program, you are required to have 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous active play each day. So when you're creating your lesson plan, you're creating your daily schedule, there needs to be at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous active play for this age group. That can be 30 minutes in the morning, that can be 30 minutes in the afternoon. All right. But these kids, they need it. All right. They're starting to develop their physical impulses, and that physical impulse has to come out. And if you don't provide them the opportunities for that physical impulse to come out, then of course they're going to do it on their own. All right. Opportunities for language development. So some examples right here would be washable soft animals or puppets. When we're playing with a puppet, we use our language to mimic the voice of the character of the puppet. Simple picture books that they can look at, and the kids kind of create their own story. Pictures of familiar items and places. So lots of real life pictures that are in your toddler 2-year-old classroom, and they need to be large pictures, like a minimum of an 8x10 picture throughout the classroom. And you're constantly going to be asking open-ended questions about the pictures, the real life pictures that you have in your classroom. This is going to create language development. And remember, your outside voice becomes their inside voice. The voices, the language that you use in the classroom is going to be the first language that comes out of their mouth. So we get to program this language development. So choose your words wisely. All right. And any of you that have children of your own, or you have grandchildren, or you have friends with young children, y'all know that those toddler 2-year-olds, what do they say? Kids say the darndest things. No, kids just repeat what they hear adults say. All right. And sometimes it can be quite alarming, the words, the language that comes out of their mouth right there. And also keep in mind, they don't have inner speech. All right. That voice that is inside of their head, like as an adult, that voice that's constantly coaching us and leading us. Don't you dare say that. Maybe we shouldn't say that. You should say this. They don't have that inner speech. That's why children basically say whatever is in their mind. All right. There's no filter for this age group. And then opportunities for social and emotional development. And again, this is on your worksheet right here. Some examples of age-appropriate activities: dress up clothes and accessories, housekeeping equipment, unbreakable mirrors, washable dolls with accessories, items for practicing buttoning and zipping, lacing and snapping. All right, so self-help skills right there. Baskets, tubs, and tote bags, not plastic bags, but tote bags for carrying stuff in. All right, this is all going to help them with their social skills because they're learning cooperation and sharing. They're learning empathy. They're learning that other people have feelings just like they do. And they're learning that their actions affect other people. All right. And what I say or do makes other people feel certain ways. All right. They're learning this at this age group. That is social development. All right. And emotional development, they're learning their independence. They're learning their self-worth. All right. This is where self-esteem comes into play. And we want to foster a positive and healthy self-esteem. All right. So, we don't want them to feel indifferent. We don't want them to feel shamed. So that's where, when we talk about the housekeeping, the dress-up clothes, this is where they're starting to become very curious about other people and other roles. All right. It's a great opportunity for you to teach acceptance right here. All right. So good stuff right there. And of course, opportunities for self-help skills. So going to the restroom, on their own, washing their hands, and then feeding themselves. And remember, these are all skills that have to be taught. These are all skills that have to be practiced. All right. Toileting, hand washing, self-feeding are skills that have to be practiced. All right. And taught. And potty training, we can do a whole 2-hour workshop just on potty training, but we're not going to get all into that. All right. You are not required to share a daily report with parents in a toddler classroom like you do in an infant room. For infants, you are required to share a daily report. But in the toddler 2-year-old classroom, you're not required to share a daily report. You just need to have a plan in place to communicate important information to parents about things that have gone on throughout the day. All right. So have that plan to communicate out there. Now, I'm going to shift gears now and want to spend the last 15 minutes of our webinar talking about discipline and guidance. All right. Because, with this particular age group, this is where discipline and guidance, coaching and leading start coming into play. All right. So I want to talk about what methods of discipline and guidance can caregivers use for a toddler 2-year-old age group. All right. Now remember, and this is probably so important for this age group, more than any other age group that we work with, this is the most important thing. All behavior is a form of communication. Because these children have limited language skills, and if you're working with a young toddler group, they may have no language skills. All right. But even, 18 months to 36 months, they have limited verbal communication. All behavior is a form of communication. So when there is a child being aggressive, when there is a child not meeting your expectation, you always want to ask yourself, what are they trying to communicate? And all behavior is an opportunity for you to teach. All right? This is your opportunity to lend a new skill. And again, toddler 2-year-old, this is huge. All right? So it needs to be individualized and consistent for each child. So again, that predictability right here, appropriate for the child's understanding. So, whatever it is that you're trying to tell them and show them, all right, are they able to understand it? All right. So you have to be able to see the world from the child's point of view. You've got to be able to see the world from their version of reality. And the skill that you're trying to lend to them, is it appropriate for their understanding? And I really want y'all to understand for toddlers and 2s, you can't just tell them, do this or don't do this. You have to show them. Okay? And not only are you going to show them, but then you have to practice it. All right? We'll tell them, we're going to show them, and we're going to practice. All right? That is important right there. And a positive method of discipline and guidance that encourages self-esteem, self-control, and self-direction. All right? You're lending a new skill. So when you have a child that's being aggressive and they're not meeting an expectation, not only are you going to ask, what are they trying to communicate? You're also going to ask the question, what skill is missing? Now, for this age group, 18 months to 36 months, they're missing a lot of skills. All right. They don't have a whole lot of skills that they have developed yet. So we're going to have to lend and practice a lot of skills. And we're going to do it in a way that encourages self-esteem, self-control, and self-direction. We're going to do that by using praise and encouragement for good behavior instead of only focusing on the unacceptable behavior. You did it. You put the block on the shelf just like this so that the other children will be safe. All right? You did it. You washed your hands just like this so that you and the other children would be healthy. All right? So that praise and encouragement, we're going to encourage that appropriate behavior. Instead of, how many times have I told you, put the block on the shelf? What is wrong with you? You know, you can't just stick your hands under the water and expect them to be clean. All right? You know, how many times I have to tell you this? No, you did it. You washed your hands just like this so that you and the other children would be healthy. All right? Remind the children of expectations daily by using clear, positive statements. And we're going to remind the children of the expected behavior by using visuals. All right? Remember, they don't have inner speech, but what they do have in their brain is images. So the more visuals that you can give them to remind them of the expectation, the more successful your classroom is going to be. So you're going to have a visual routine book or posters on the wall. This is how we wash our hands. Step 1, step 2, step 3. This is how we put the blocks on the shelf, and you're going to have a picture of blocks all over the floor. You're going to have a picture of a child pulling out a bucket. You're going to have a picture of a child putting the toys in the bucket. And then you're going to have a picture of the bucket full of toys on the shelf. All right? So we're going to remind them of the expected behavior, but do it with visuals. And then you're going to verbally describe the steps to them every single day. All right? Over and over and over again. Redirecting behavior using positive statements. All right? And if you subscribe to Time Out, you can use a brief supervised separation from the group that is appropriate for the child's age and development, that is limited to no more than 1 minute per the child's age. So toddlers, 1 minute, 2-year-olds, 2 minutes. Now, I personally do not believe in timeout. There is no skill that is taught whenever you put a child in timeout. You're not teaching any new skill, and using timeout is not reasonable, it's not related, and it's not respectful to the behavior. So, you know, that's just my belief right there. You get to decide within your program, you know, what you want to do here. Just 1 minute per the child's age if you do that. Now, just remember, in a toddler 2-year-old classroom, there are types of discipline and guidance that or punishments that are prohibited. I kind of like to do this activity with teachers about using like a T-chart and what are some techniques that are discipline and guidance. And discipline and guidance teaches a new skill. Punishment, you know, is something that is going to be shameful or hurtful, you know, to the child right here. So understanding the difference between discipline and guidance versus punishment, and whatever consequence you're imposing on that child, where is it going to fall on this chart? Is it going to teach a new skill, or is it shaming or hurting the child? All right. And we want to stick to teaching a new skill right here. So, of course, corporal punishment or threats of corporal punishment is prohibited. And that would include, if you don't stop it, I'm going to call your mother. All right. You know what's going to happen then. That is a threat. All right. That is prohibited in your classroom right there. Punishment associated with food, naps, or toilet training. So, all right, everyone that meets expectations today, gets a piece of candy at the end of the day, all right, candy is food, that would be prohibited, all right? Those type of things, you can't do that. Or if you don't behave, I'm going to throw your lunch away. Okay, that would be prohibited right there. Okay. Pinching, shaking, or biting a child is prohibited. Sometimes we see this where, the biter will bite them back. All right. You can't tell someone to bite them back. That would be prohibited right there. Or a parent, sometimes might say, well, if my child bites in the classroom, bite them back. No, we can't do that, y'all. Okay, that's crazy town right there. And I have a whole different webinar on my website on biting. So y'all can check that out. It's got some really good information for you right there. I remember growing up, my mom was a pincher. So especially in church, when you were misbehaving in church, man, she would get you right here and pinch and twist. That would be prohibited. You can't do that. Hitting a child on the hand with an instrument, y'all, this is actually very common, where a child goes to reach for something and the teacher goes, no, 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 no. All right. No, 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 no. Y'all, that would be hitting the child with a hand or an instrument. That is prohibited right there. Putting anything in the child's mouth, prohibited. Humiliating, rejecting, or yelling at a child. So you need to watch your tone of voice. This is where I talked about composure earlier. Using a loud, aggressive voice tone can be considered yelling, and that is prohibited. Of course, subjecting a child to harsh, abusive, or profane language is prohibited. Placing a child in a locked or dark room, bathroom, or closet is prohibited. And unfortunately, we have seen these news stories many times where children have been locked in a closet or bathroom as a form of punishment when they weren't meeting an expectation. Y'all, that's going to get you closed down right there. All right. Withholding active play or keeping a child inside as a consequence for behavior. All right. That is now prohibited. So you can't take away a child's active play time, or you can't take away a child's outside time as a form of punishment. They need this. We talked about physical impulses earlier. They need that moderate to vigorous active play. They need to get outside and get the vitamins from the sun. Withholding this is actually going to make things worse. All right. But this was added to the minimum standards that you can be cited for this now. And then, of course, requiring the child to be silent or inactive for an inappropriate long period of time for the child's age, or requiring the child to remain in a restrictive device. So putting the biter in a high chair so that they can't get to the other children, or strapping them into a chair so that they can't get to the other children, that would be prohibited right there. All right. And plus, all 10 of these things that we just went through on the types of discipline, guidance, or punishment that is prohibited, just always ask yourself, is there a new skill being taught? All right. So whatever consequence I'm imposing is a new skill being taught. All right. That's what you want to look at right there. All right, very good. Now, if you are an employee and you actually have your own child in your program, employees may discipline their own child as long as it meets everything that we just talked about. So it has to meet the child care minimum standards, and it has to meet your discipline and guidance policy. All right. So now what they do at home, different story, as long as the child's not being abused or neglected. But when an employee's child is at your licensed program, okay, whether it's the employee's own personal child or not, They have to meet these regulations. They have to follow your discipline and guidance policies. Doesn't matter that it's your own child. Okay. So if you subscribe to a different belief or value, you do that at home. All right. What are your thoughts on hearing a staff tell a child if they don't behave, you are going to take their baby home? I'm assuming like the baby doll. So the child has the baby doll that they're playing with, and the teacher saying, "I'm going to take that baby doll home." Yeah. Well, now you're putting the baby doll in timeout. All right, and the baby doll didn't do anything. They don't deserve to go to timeout. But again, there's no new skill being taught. All right, and so threatening to take a toy away from them or to take it home, that would be punishment. It would be a threat, which is prohibited. And again, it's not teaching a new skill. We got a great opportunity right here to teach the child how to play with the baby doll appropriately and how to share the baby doll. Now, I know that we're technically out of time, but when we talk about healthy attachment figures, typically another human is the healthy attachment figure. If a child does not have a human to be their healthy attachment figure, then a materialistic item may give them comfort and become their attachment toy or their attachment item. So sometimes children become very protective of one particular toy or piece of equipment in the classroom because that's what brings them comfort. All right. Because another human has not done that for them yet. All right. So, there you've got an opportunity to work with that teacher on becoming a healthy attachment figure so that they don't need that materialistic item to feel comfortable. All right. And we cover that in some of our other trainings right there. All right, so that was a lot of information in our 1 hour. I hope this was helpful to you. The worksheet that you can complete to get your certificate of completion is posted on Facebook. There's a $5 fee for your certificate of completion. If you're going to pay with a credit card, then you will click on the link that says online worksheet paying with a credit card. If your school has established an online account with me, and you have a 5-digit account number, then you'll click on the worksheet that says online worksheet paying with an online account number. Easy breezy. Most of y'all know how to do this. You've been doing it for a while. So there you go. Remember, all of our videos are recorded. So if you came in late and you did not catch the entire hour, please make sure you go back and watch the entire video before you do your worksheet. And you can definitely share this with your toddler 2-year-old teachers or anyone that would benefit from this video. They can go back and they can watch it on Facebook under the video library, or I will have this posted on our Facebook page soon. All right, so there you go. Thank you, everybody, so much, and have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, and have a great and safe weekend coming up. I will see all of you again very, very soon. Bye.